Donald Trump walked into the interview expecting business as usual, but Rachel Simmons, the reporter, hit him with a question that changed everything. What happened next? No one saw coming. The bright studio lights beamed down on the sleek glass table, reflecting the tension in the air before the first question was even asked. Veteran journalist Rachel Simmons, known for her sharp, no-nonsense approach, sat poised, legs crossed, one hand resting on her stack of neatly arranged notes. Across from her, Donald Trump, dressed in a dark suit and his signature red tie, leaned back slightly in his chair, radiating his usual confidence. This wasn't his first tough interview. He had weathered countless journalists, deflected attacks, and turned scandals into sound bites. But tonight, something was different. The network had heavily promoted this interview, teasing a bold discussion on the current state of the country. The audience, both in the studio and at home, expected fireworks. Still, no one, not even Trump himself, knew just how explosive the night would become. Rachel adjusted her mic, cleared her throat, and began. "Mr. President, let's start with the topic on everyone's mind." Trump cut in smoothly, a small smirk playing on his lips. "Rachel, come on. I talk to a lot of people. I don't think this is what they're talking about." A few chuckles came from the control room. He was already working the room, playing to his bass. Rachel expected it. She barely blinked before steering the conversation back. "We'll let the audience decide that. Let's talk about leadership, the challenges facing this country, the way your administration—" Trump waved a hand dismissively. "We've done great. Absolutely great. Probably better than anyone else. You know it. The people know it. They don't always want to admit it, but they know." Rachel jotted something down, not because she needed notes, but to keep him talking, to let him settle in, to let him think this was just another routine sit-down. Then she leaned forward, slightly. "You've built your brand on strength, Mr. President, the idea that you always have control. But what happens when that control starts to slip?" For a fraction of a second, Trump's eyes flickered, but his smirk remained. "Rachel, that's a very nasty question, very nasty. I think you do great at CNN." Laughter followed, a few heads shaking in the background, the expected theatrics. But Rachel wasn't laughing. She flipped a page, tapped her pen against the desk, and lowered her voice just enough to change the energy in the room. "Let's talk about your personal life." Silence. A slight shift in Trump's posture. "More specifically, your marriage." The smirk didn't fade completely, but the amusement behind it did. Rachel felt the shift before she even saw it. Trump's response came a bit slower this time. "Oh, here we go. Another fake news hit piece. You guys never quit, do you?" Rachel didn't blink. "I think the public deserves to know what's real and what isn't. Wouldn't you agree?" Trump leaned forward, tapping a finger on the desk. "What I agree with, Rachel, is that the media is obsessed with me. It's been that way for years. You people don't care about the economy, don't care about the border. No, you care about gossip. It's pathetic." Rachel didn't move, didn't react, didn't let him control the rhythm. She flipped another page, her voice steady, her expression neutral. "Then let's get the facts straight. Have there been problems in your marriage?" Trump scoffed, shaking his head. "What kind of question is that? Do you ask Biden these things? I don't think so." Rachel exhaled through her nose like a fighter calculating the next punch. "I'm asking you, Mr. Trump, because in the last 3 weeks, multiple sources close to you have shared troubling information. And tonight, I have something no one else does." The room felt colder. Even the crew, trained professionals who had seen it all, were suddenly motionless. Trump stared at her, his confidence still there but not as effortless as before. "You people never stop. But fine, go ahead, Rachel. What's your little scoop?" Rachel reached for a folder, placing it on the table between them. She didn't open it. Not yet. She let it sit there, its presence alone making the tension thicker, heavier. She looked Trump in the eye and spoke with the certainty of someone holding something undeniable. "Mr. President, what would you say if I told you I have proof?" But Trump wasn't laughing anymore. For a moment, Trump didn't move. His hands rested on the table, fingers slightly curled, but his expression had shifted just a fraction, just enough to notice. Rachel let the silence linger. She knew how to use stillness like a weapon, how to let a moment hang in the air until the other person felt the need to fill it. Trump exhaled sharply through his nose. "Let me guess, anonymous sources, more fake leaks. You know, Rachel, you're better than this. People used to respect you." Rachel tilted her head. "I think respect comes from telling the truth. Wouldn't you agree?" Trump scoffed. "Oh, please, you media types don't care about truth. You care about ratings." Rachel kept her gaze steady. Then slowly she reached for the folder in front of her. She didn't open it right away. She just placed a single hand on top of it, letting the weight of its contents do the work. "Let's talk about Mar-a-Lago, February 14th. The room stilled. Even the control booth, normally humming with quiet chatter and direction, was silent. Trump blinked once, twice. Then he leaned back, folding his arms across his chest. "Oh, now we're making up dates. Go ahead, Rachel. Tell me what I supposedly did." Rachel opened the folder. The pages inside were crisp, freshly printed. She lifted one of them, glancing at it briefly before setting it face up on the table. A photograph. It wasn't grainy, wasn't tabloid trash. It was sharp, professional, a still taken from surveillance footage. Trump didn't look at it right away, but Rachel watched his jaw shift slightly. Just a twitch, just a muscle tightening before he forced himself back into his usual bravado. "You know, I meet a lot of people. I shake hands with thousands of people. If you're trying to make this into something..." Rachel slid the photo forward. "Not just a handshake, Mr. Trump, a private meeting. A very specific one, in a restricted area of Mar-a-Lago late at night with a woman who wasn't your wife." Trump's face didn't change, not outwardly. But something behind his eyes flickered. Just for a second. "Rachel, you're embarrassing yourself." She ignored the jab. "This woman, Mr. Trump, do you deny knowing her?" Trump finally glanced at the photo, just for a split second. Then he sat back, smirking. "This is pathetic. This is why no one trusts the media. You think you can take a picture of me standing next to someone and spin a whole scandal? Give me a break." Rachel didn't react. She flipped another page. A second photo. This time a closer angle. A conversation. The woman's face partially obscured, but the body language unmistakable. Intimate. Familiar. Trump's fingers tapped against the desk, a slow, steady rhythm. Rachel placed another document beside the images. "Text messages between her and a member of your staff arranging the meeting. The timestamps match the footage. It wasn't a coincidence, Mr. Trump." Silence. Rachel leaned forward. "Are you still calling this fake news?" Trump laughed. Suddenly, a sharp, hollow sound. "Oh, this is rich. So now we're hacking people's phones. Is that what we do? Is that legal? Are you going to tell me you got this evidence fair and square?" Rachel let the accusation hang in the air. She knew what he was doing, turning the attack around, making the investigation itself the villain instead of the facts being uncovered. She tapped the page with one manicured nail. "It's not hacked. It was submitted voluntarily by a former head, someone from your own circle, someone who saw what was happening and decided the truth was more important than loyalty." Trump's smile didn't fade, but it changed, the edges tighter, the amusement forced. "Oh, I get it now. This is a hit job. You people want to make a spectacle out of me. You want to take a couple of blurry photos and turn them into Watergate. Rachel, you're pathetic." Rachel didn't blink. She turned the page one last time, a final document. She slid it across the table without a word. Trump hesitated, just for a second. Then he glanced down, and for the first time that night, the smirk disappeared completely. But the cameras were still rolling, and the world was watching. For the first time, Trump didn't have a comeback. Ready. No dismissive wave, no sarcastic jab, just silence. His eyes scanned the document Rachel had placed before him. A signed affidavit, a sworn statement from someone inside his own camp, detailing a pattern of secret meetings, coded messages, and careful planning. Rachel let him read. She didn't speak, didn't move. Trump finally looked up. "This is garbage." Rachel didn't react. "So you deny it?" Trump scoffed. "I deny that this is real. I deny that you people have any credibility left. This is a joke. Do you even know how many fake stories have been written about me, about my family? You think I care about this?" Rachel folded her hands in front of her. "Then why do you look nervous?" Trump laughed. Too loud, too forced. "Oh, I'm shaking, Rachel, terrified." But the room had changed. The air was heavier now, thick with something unspoken. Even the production team, people who had seen him brush off accusations before, could tell this was different. Rachel took a breath, flipping another page in her notes. "You're saying this is all fake, but I have one more thing." Trump shook his head. "Of course you do. Let me guess. Another anonymous source, more exclusive leaks. This is pathetic, even for you." Rachel ignored him. She reached for a small earpiece in her left ear and touched the side lightly, listening. Then she looked at Trump. "We just got clearance to play an audio recording." Trump's face changed completely. The casual arrogance slipped for the first time. He blinked rapidly, shifting in his seat. "You don't have—" Rachel raised a hand. "Let's listen." The control booth queued it up. A voice filled the studio, a male voice, slightly distorted by the phone recording but clear enough. "I'll take care of it. Just make sure no one talks. I don't need this getting out before the campaign ramps up." Then a pause. Another voice, softer but distinct. "What about her? She's not going to stay quiet." A small chuckle. "She will. Trust me. There are ways to handle this." The recording ended abruptly. The silence that followed was deafening. Trump's face was stone, but his hands were gripping the armrest of his chair, knuckles pale. Rachel leaned forward slightly. "That voice. Do you recognize it?" Trump breathed in through his nose, nostrils flaring. "Play it again." Rachel didn't flinch. "I think the audience heard it just fine the first time." Trump's jaw clenched. "You people are criminals, you know that? Wiretapping, leaking fake news. You should be ashamed." Rachel tilted her head. "So you're saying that wasn't you?" Trump pointed a finger at her. "I'm saying you're a fraud." But his voice was different now, not controlled, not commanding. Shaken. Rachel took her time before responding. The woman in that conversation, the one he was worried about. She flipped the last page of her notes and laid it on the table. A text message exchange. One side of the conversation clearly belonging to a woman who sounded panicked. "I don't know if I can do this. If they find out I talked, I'm done. He told me I'd regret it." The response from the other person. "It's too late. The story is out. Stay somewhere safe." Trump's hands slammed down on the table. "This is a setup." The studio jumped. Even Rachel, who had been ice calm this entire time, blinked once at the sudden outburst. Trump leaned forward, face red now, jabbing a finger at her. "You think you can come here and throw this garbage at me? You think I don't see what you're doing? You people are sick, disgusting. This is why no one trusts you." Rachel didn't lean back, didn't react to his aggression. She stayed right where she was. "If this is all fake, Mr. Trump, then why are you so angry?" Trump's breathing was heavy, shoulders tense. His eyes darted toward the control booth, the cameras, the producers who were too afraid to cut the feed. Rachel folded her hands. Together, her voice calm, almost soothing. You walked in here expecting the usual political talk. But this isn't about policies. This isn't about party lines. This is about the truth. Trump shook his head, laughing bitterly. You think you know the truth? You don't know anything. Rachel didn't blink. Then tell us right now, what do we not know? Trump didn't answer, but everyone watching could see this wasn't just another interview anymore. This was something bigger. The silence in the studio stretched, tense, suffocating, unnatural. For the first time in his long career of handling the media, Trump looked cornered, not by speculation, not by political opponents, but by something he couldn't brush aside with a joke or a dismissive wave of his hand. Facts. Rachel waited, watching him closely, carefully. The way his fingers tapped against the desk now, not in confidence but in irritation. The way his eyes darted toward the producers, as if willing them to cut the broadcast. But the cameras kept rolling. Trump exhaled sharply. You think you're clever, huh? You think you've got some big gotcha moment? Let me tell you something, Rachel. People like you disgust me. You sit there, pretending to be all high and mighty, but you're nothing but a snake. Rachel remained completely still. A snake, she repeated. Trump pointed at her, his finger jabbing the air. That's right, a liar, a fraud. You think you can sit there and interrogate me like I'm some criminal? Let me tell you something, sweetheart. I've built more in my life than you could ever dream of. And you're just another fake news puppet. Rachel tilted her head slightly. If this is all fake, why are you getting so worked up? Trump laughed suddenly, sharp, forced, humorless. Oh, that's rich, that's real cute. You sit here with your little folder, your little pile of evidence, and you think that makes you powerful. Rachel stayed silent. Trump's voice rose. I've dealt with your kind before, smug, self-righteous, desperate for attention. You don't care about the truth, you just want to take me down. You all do. Rachel's expression didn't change. Then answer the question. Trump's hands slammed down on the table. The entire studio flinched. I don't have to answer anything. His voice boomed through the speakers, louder than it had been all night. The crew visibly stiffened, eyes wide, unsure if they should step in. Rachel didn't react. Trump leaned forward, his face red now, his breathing heavier. You people have no shame. You drag my name through the mud, attack my family, and for what? Ratings, clicks. You should be ashamed of yourself. Rachel calmly turned a page in her notes. If this is about your family, why hasn't your wife defended you? Trump blinked. Rachel continued, voice steady, unwavering. Melania hasn't made a single public statement since these rumors started. Not a tweet, not an interview, not even a denial. Why is that? Trump's expression darkened. Rachel pressed on. Is it because she knows the truth? Trump's jaw clenched. He looked down at the table for a split second, but it was enough. Enough for millions of viewers watching to see what Rachel saw. Doubt. He wasn't angry because this was a lie. He was angry because he had lost control of the story. He shook his head. This is a disgrace. Rachel nodded slowly. Maybe. But whose disgrace is it, Mr. Trump? Trump looked at her, truly looked at her, and for a brief second there was no bravado left. No smirking, no deflection. Just a man sitting under the weight of something he didn't expect to face. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, a voice cut through the control booth. We need to go to break. Now. The producers were panicking. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't controlled. This was unraveling in real time. Trump sat back in his chair, exhaling sharply. Yeah, go to break. Do it now. The screen cut to black. And just like that, the interview was over. But the damage was done. And the world wasn't about to look away. The second the screen cut to black, the internet caught fire. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, every platform exploded at once. Millions had watched the interview live, but now clips were spreading like wildfire. A 20-second snippet of Trump slamming the table, 3 million views in an hour. A 10-second cut of him demanding a break, trending #1 worldwide. A supercut of Rachel's unflinching stare, a meme before the broadcast even ended. Had morning Trump meltdown trended before, Trump's team could barely attempt damage control. But it wasn't just social media. Cable news jumped on the moment instantly. CNN called it the most unhinged interview of Trump's career. Fox News labeled it a left-wing media ambush. MSNBC ran it as Trump finally loses control on live TV. No one could agree on what had happened, but everyone knew it was historic. And then came the speculation. People analyzed every micro-expression, every glance, every pause before Trump spoke. Was he lying? Was he hiding something? Had Rachel just caught him in the biggest scandal of his personal life? A panel of body language experts broke down his every move. You see here, the way he clenched his jaw, that's a classic sign of suppressed anger. But look at this. He blinks rapidly when she mentions his wife. That's a telltale sign of discomfort. What we saw tonight was a man losing control of his own narrative. And that's rare. But while pundits debated, Trump's inner circle was in full panic mode. Inside Trump Tower, his team was scrambling. They needed a statement, something strong, something that could shift the conversation before it spiraled any further. Within an hour, Trump's official Truth Social account blasted a furious response. Fake news media added again. Rachel Simmons is a liar. Totally set up. They cut me off when I started telling the truth. America sees what's happening. Sad. The post racked up hundreds of thousands of likes in minutes. His supporters rallied instantly. They did cut him off. Rachel Simmons is just another liberal puppet. Classic media hit job. Nothing to see here. But not everyone was convinced. Some of Trump's own base hesitated, because no matter how much they wanted to dismiss it, they had seen something different in his face tonight. The confidence had cracked. The usual swagger had faltered. And then, as if on cue, something even bigger happened. Rachel Simmons went live. She sat in a dimly lit newsroom, her expression unshaken. The headline on the screen was simple: the truth about tonight's interview. Her voice was calm, clear, cutting. I knew this interview would be difficult. I knew the questions would be uncomfortable. But I also knew that the American people deserved answers. She leaned forward. What happened tonight wasn't an ambush. It wasn't an attack. It was a moment of truth. And if someone can't handle the truth, that's not my problem. That's theirs. Boom. The internet erupted again. Supporters cheered her on, calling it the most fearless interview in modern history. Trump's defenders raged, accusing her of being part of a political takedown. But one thing was clear. No one was talking about the election anymore. No one was talking about policies or foreign affairs. All anyone wanted to know was one thing. Was Rachel telling the truth, or was Trump hiding something? But the story wasn't finished yet. Not even close. Inside Trump's private residence at Mar-a-Lago, the atmosphere was suffocating. The usual confidence that filled the room was nowhere to be found. The television in the background played, news coverage of the interview on a loop, but no one was really watching anymore. The headlines screamed disaster. Trump explodes on live TV. What is he hiding? Rachel Simmons stands her ground. The interview that shook America. Trump's meltdown, the beginning of the end? Trump sat in his leather chair, phone in hand, scrolling furiously. Every news outlet, every social media feed, wall-to-wall coverage of his blow-up. He'd been in scandals before, sure, But this was different. His advisors stood nearby, stiff, silent, waiting. They knew better than to speak first. Finally, he threw his phone down on the table. "We fix this. Now." His campaign manager, a man who had handled crisis after crisis, cleared his throat. "We need to take control of the story before it controls us." Trump's eyes narrowed. "And how do we do that?" A beat of hesitation. Then, "We make Rachel the villain." Trump scoffed. "They already hate her. What else can we do?" The advisor leaned forward. "We push harder. We call the interview a trap, a politically motivated attack. We say she was fed information by our enemies, hell, by the deep state. We make this about media corruption, not your reaction." Trump rubbed his chin. "Go on." "We need to flood the news cycle with distractions, find dirt on Simmons, any skeletons in her closet, any missteps in her career, even personal drama. Make her the story, not you." Trump exhaled slowly, considering. Then, finally, he nodded. "Do it." Within hours, the counterattack began. Pro-Trump media figures flooded the airwaves. "Rachel Simmons is a partisan hack. This wasn't journalism, this was a hit job. Who gave her those so-called leaks? Where's the proof that any of it is real?" The strategy was clear. Discredit, deflect, distract. But there was one problem. Rachel wasn't backing down. Rachel knew what was coming. She had spent years in this business. She understood how the machine worked. She had seen it happen to colleagues, to politicians, to whistleblowers. But knowing didn't make it easier. By the next morning, her name was trending for a different reason. Headlines surfaced with smears, half-truths, outright lies. Rachel Simmons, the woman with a hidden agenda. Inside the life of Trump's most hated journalist. Who is really behind Rachel Simmons? Then came the threats. Her inbox flooded with vile messages, accusations, even death threats. Her phone buzzed with calls from blocked numbers. Her producer walked into her office, face grim. "We need to talk." Rachel set her coffee down. "I'm guessing this isn't about my next segment." The producer sighed. "They're going after you hard. Some of these attacks, they're not just about the interview anymore. They're trying to make you the story." Rachel leaned back in her chair, exhaling. "I figured." Her producer hesitated. "We need to be careful, Rachel. This is different." Rachel's jaw tightened. She thought back to the interview, the moment she saw Trump's face shift, the moment she knew she had touched a nerve. "No," she said finally, "this is exactly why we can't back down." Her producer studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right then, let's fight." Meanwhile, one voice remained conspicuously absent. Melania Trump. The First Lady had been silent through scandals before, but this time, not a single word. No statements, no tweets, no public defense of her husband. The silence spoke louder than any denial ever could. News anchors started asking the obvious question. Why hasn't Melania refuted these allegations? Is the First Lady deliberately staying quiet? What does her silence mean for Trump's marriage? Paparazzi camped outside her. Usual spots, hoping for a glimpse, hoping for anything. But she stayed out of sight. And that was bad news for Trump, because now the conversation wasn't just about the interview anymore. It was about the bigger picture. With every hour, the fallout grew. Rachel wasn't backing down. Melania wasn't defending her husband. And Trump, he was fighting. But for the first time, he wasn't winning. But the real question wasn't what had already happened. It was what would happen next. The fallout from the interview had already spiraled beyond anything Trump's team expected. But the real problem, it wasn't going away. Days passed. The news cycle should have moved on. Another scandal, another controversy, something to drown out the moment and make people forget. But no one was forgetting. Clips from the interview continued to dominate social media, dissected frame by frame. Analysts debated every shift in Trump's posture, every pause before he answered. And Melania's silence. That had taken on a life of its own. The First Lady's absence from public events fueled new rumors. Some speculated she was deliberately avoiding questions. Others claimed she had left D.C. entirely. The White House refused to comment, no statements at this time. Trump's campaign tried to redirect. This is a distraction from real issues. But reporters kept asking the same question. Where is Melania Trump? And then, just as the speculation reached a fever pitch, something happened that no one saw coming. A new leak. A journalist from the Washington Post published an article titled, "Inside the White House Crisis." Sources said Trump's inner circle was in panic mode. Anonymous insiders claimed that, behind the scenes, Trump's team was deeply divided. Some wanted to go after Rachel Simmons harder, to paint her as a liar, to bury her credibility. Others wanted to let the story die, knowing that every attempt to fight back only made it worse. And then, the most damning part of the report. Multiple sources confirmed that Melania had left Washington the morning after the interview. Not permanently, not dramatically, but quietly, without fanfare, and she hadn't told her husband. The public erupted. Was it true? Had she really left? Was this a temporary break or something bigger? Rachel Simmons, meanwhile, was waiting. The network had been inundated with interview requests. Every talk show, every major publication wanted a follow-up. She declined them all, until one night, exactly 1 week after the Trump interview, she walked onto her own news set, sat in her chair, and looked directly into the camera. Her voice was steady. A lot has been said since my interview with Donald Trump. A lot of spin, a lot of speculation. But here's what matters. She placed her hands on the desk. The truth doesn't belong to one side or the other. It doesn't care about politics or party lines or damage control. The truth exists, whether we like it or not. She leaned forward slightly. And no matter how loud someone shouts, no matter how many times they call it fake news, the truth always comes out. Boom. Mic drop. The segment went viral instantly. Some people called her fearless. Some called her an opportunist. Some called her a liar. But one thing was clear. No one was ignoring her. Meanwhile, inside Mar-a-Lago, Trump watched the broadcast in silence. The bluster, the anger, the shouting, that was for the cameras. But privately, he knew this wasn't over. He grabbed his phone, opened Twitter, and started typing. But then he stopped. For the first time in his entire career, he hesitated. He deleted the draft, tossed his phone under the couch, and stared at the screen. Rachel was still talking, still in control. And Trump hated it. Because for the first time, it wasn't just another interview. It was something he couldn't erase. Power is an illusion until someone stands up to it. When people in power lose control of their own story, they do everything they can to rewrite it, bury it, erase it. But the truth has a way of surviving. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to ask the right question. So what do you think? Was this just another media circus? Or did Rachel Simmons expose something real? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that challenge the narrative.